program started, I am happy to introduce our host for the day, Jamie Gitzinger with Bridgepointe Community. Jamie?
Well, I agree with Amy. What a great turnout. We're so thankful to have you all here with us today to show off our beautiful home and to introduce you to some of our residents that live here. It's very exciting for us to open our doors up. We anticipated this day, and I'm glad we had such a great turnout. I also wanted to just talk a little bit about the logistics. If you need to know where the restroom is, if you go to the left, there's an elevator lobby, and there's restrooms located there. So that's always important to know right after lunch. But I did want to talk a little bit about the Bridgepointe itself. And for those of you who don't have a lot of information about it, I know our CEO is here, and I'm going to introduce him in just a moment, and he has a PowerPoint to go over. But in relationship to the Bridgepointe, we actually are more of a wellness community than a healthcare community. Although we do have a healthcare license, we do have nurses and nursing assistants around the clock, and we manage the wellness of the individuals that live here. You know, our focus is more about enhancing the journey for those that are seniors. We have an adult day center, which is called the Best Friends Adult Day Center. And at the end of our property here, if you were to continue through the lane, you would see that. That actually is a program that has been up and running for almost 30 years. So it is not new to this area, but it is a space now here at the community that we share. And we'll speak a little about the Adult Day Center as well. But the Bridgepointe has a memory care, a devoted memory care wing, which actually is secured and has 36 studio apartments. We also have 36 assisted senior care apartments for the other half of our community, which consist of 1-bedrooms and studio apartments. So if you have any questions in relationship to the different types of services that we provide, we're more than happy to give you individualized tours. Stop in any day of the week, and we'd be more than happy to schedule times to specifically spend that time with you and explain a little bit more about the services we offer. But at this time, I'd like to introduce Keith Knapp. He's the CEO of Christian Care Communities, and a big reason for today, and also obviously the leader of our company. So, Keith.
Well, thanks for coming out. Thank you for hosting, everybody. Glad to be with you all today. I lost my technical support. There's not a clicker for this. Remember in the job description it says other duties as assigned? Yes. It's kind of a broad statement, but sometimes we have to bring that to bear. Well, my big announcement before I get started with what you came to hear about is that I'm a newly minted grandpa. So for those of you who are already members of the club, now I get it. And so later this weekend, I'm heading down to Raleigh, North Carolina to see you all about that. When we moved our kids to Raleigh, this is the one with our only other grandchild. I looked desperately for something not to like about Raleigh. There's not much not to like, except for maybe basketball. So go ahead and advance. I guess we'll do the Carol Burnett. Now, there's some people who know what I'm talking about with Carol Burnett. I know. They're the same people that know what happened 50 years ago today. Ed Sullivan, Beatles. Oh, come on. You had to be under a rock to not know that this week. Anyway, I want to tell you a little bit today about what's going on in aging services, elder care, on a global basis. Go ahead and we're having to rethink the way we are as a society dealing with so many people growing older, and sometimes that requires a little bit of a paradigm shift.
Whoa, that's not good.
Oh, I don't need this. I'm already late.
Somebody will come. Anybody out there?
Do you have a phone?
No. Sorry. Somebody! Hello? There are 2 people stuck on an escalator and we need help. Now, would somebody please do something? I don't believe this. You gotta be kidding me.
I'm gonna cry.
Well, there's nothing else left to do, is it?
Hello? Hey, don't worry about it. I'll fix it in a second.
He said he can fix it. All right. All right. That's more like it. He says he can fix it.
The point being, of course, that sometimes the answers are right under our nose, but we get kind of in a rut. Never happened to you? Well, that's kind of what's happened with healthcare in general, but aging services in particular in the last 60 years because of public funding and a lot of other things we've become overly reliant on. And the way we've been doing it for the last 60 years is not sustainable over the next 30. And I look around the room, I see a lot of other fellow card-carrying boomers. We're the reason. You all had too many kids. Shame. Too many kids. And now we're all getting over that threshold, and so we're first discovering as the adult children of our own parents what we don't want our own old age to look like. Has that happened to anybody in the room yet? Because if it hasn't, it's probably going to. And so what we're trying to be a part of is the solution. And as Jamie said, really playing to people's remaining strengths instead of the healthcare model of yesteryear where you identify problems and then you try to fix those problems, or worse yet, give people the unfair expectation that they can be better and return to the way they were, that very acute care model. And instead, celebrate where you are in life right now, and let's get the most out of what we got. And so Bridgepointe is the manifestation of that kind of thinking, and that's a branding we're doing statewide with our new properties, Bridgepointe, with that metaphor of a bridge across from where you are today for where you're going, and we're here to be helpful in making sure that that's a good experience and enhancing that journey of life for everybody as they cross over. Not just the end user, but the entire family unit, because we've scattered about now as a society. We've got the daughter in Palo Alto and one in Houston, and mom's here, and so in many respects we become that surrogate family for someone who's here because of the way the family has scattered. So we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on that's encouraging about the opportunities in aging services, some of which may even touch your business line of service, and you might be thinking about new opportunities. But for most people, it's going to touch at least somebody you know at church, a neighbor, maybe your own family. And I want you to leave here encouraged about the fact that there are lots of people thinking about how can we do better. And that's our main message from Christian Care Communities. We've been doing this for 130 years. We're doing old folks before old folks were cool. Before, with apologies to Barbara Mandrell. And so we need to reinvent elder care. What's that going to look like? Well, nobody knows for sure, but there are a couple places that are low-hanging fruit. I want to tell you a little bit about some of the top, what I think are the most encouraging innovations in the pipeline. Some of them are already being field tested. Some of them you'll find here at Bridgepointe because we know already that they work. We're acting more like the Romans than the Greeks. And by that, I mean, we've kind of borrowed the best from other providers all around the country and tried to blend them in a new way here. And so a lot of the stuff you'll hear about today isn't necessarily brand spanking new. It's been proven to be effective, but we've tried to roll it together in new ways here and at other places we're doing around the state. So what are some of those emerging care models? And how are they manifest here at Bridgepointe at Ashgrove Woods? And Jamie mentioned the Best Friends program. There's an increasing demand in consumer awareness about wanting to stay home longer. This is a great end game location, but we can't build these things fast enough for the demand that we know is coming. And so where do most people want to be? They want to be home. And so how can we help in new ways for people to be safe and successful and families to manage elder care challenges, making all the options available, but that menu is kind of grown. So it's more of a cafeteria with seamless points of along that continuum rather than silos the way we've done healthcare and human services for most of the last century, really. So if you had to venture a guess, about how many people over the age of 65 last night spent the night in some form of institutional setting, multiple folks, more than 4 under one roof. Well, what percentage would you guess in America? Anybody want to take a shot at it? I hear you breathing. Anybody? 5? You're good. You're good. The next slide shows on the darn PC that's facing his table. Found you out. Anyway, when I talk to high school or college groups, they're saying 60%, 65%. Well, that means that 95% aren't. And, you know, what can we do to help manage that in a way that is what the consumer wants and is safe? Because that is the big tension. The big driver for most families is this is no longer safe. We need to do something different for mom. And how can we make that a broader range of services? So to do it the way we've been doing it in America, assuming the same rate of utilization, we would have to build somewhere in America a new 100-bed skilled nursing facility every week between now and the end of 2019. That's without a change of utilization rate. That's how exponential the growth is going to be. And as my demographer friend at the University of Louisville, Ron Crouch, would say, we know this because they've already been born. All right, so it's a pretty certainty. We got that many people to find a way, whatever that looks like, but to do it the way we've been doing it, you can't build them fast enough. So what are we going to do instead? Well, part of it is going to be things like Bridgepoint, but how do you expand the realm of services like we have done here with adult daycare services, which is pretty much what it sounds like. Adult day programming is about where child care was in the 1960s, and it has all kinds of implications for the workplace. I was sharing with someone a little bit earlier, the MetLife Foundation just released a study that the value of lost productivity in American business last year for people who are managing elder care issues on the job was somewhere in the neighborhood of 19 billion with a B. Okay, that's up from 10 billion 5 years ago. That's a lot of growth, and it's of course expected to keep growing. So business has a big interest in this issue, not even if you're in the service industry, it's how's it going to affect how you run as a company. So, you know, people are staying healthier longer, and they've got multiple chronicities, chronic conditions as they get older because we've eliminated everything else that knocks you out. And so you live longer, you have more arthritis, more diabetes, all kinds of complications that surround growing to a very advanced age. It might be interesting to know that our average age in Christian care across the state is 88. And there's no discernible difference in chronological age between the people who are living in independent living or assisted living or senior assisted care or skilled nursing. So we age at very different rates, and our bodies wear out at very different rates. This expectation of having a more seamless and greater access to services is keen, and it's going to be something that companies who don't do aren't going to be in business very much longer. And then there's big shifts in diversity in our society where cultural divides that used to be that pretty much old white people wound up in nursing homes, and they were being served by largely minority workers. That is kind of blending in a way that is no longer as true. And so how you address cultural differences with how you do your menu, how you do your programming, what kinds of things are we going to blend among staff and residents, and especially with the millennials entering the workforce, what are their expectations when you have a demented resident who grew up in the Deep South who has language on how they address a black person different than is socially acceptable today? How do you prepare people for that kind of environment and find it fulfilling work? All kinds of things wrapped around that. Technology is expected to play a huge role in how we help people stay home longer safely with monitoring of all kinds. And there's going to be this ongoing tension between privacy and how much privacy you're going to be willing to give up, just like we do at the airport now, in order to have my autonomy for staying home longer. But in our setting, there's all kinds of technology already at play at a place like Bridgepoint, from monitoring systems to electronic medical records to all kinds of things that help us keep track of information better, more timely, more accurately, and reduce the risk of transcription error, which has been a huge problem in healthcare for a long, long time because of paper moving around. You know, I'll just say as a side note, if my bank can call me, and because there was a charge on my Visa card in the Phoenix airport last week for a shirt, and that's outside my normal pattern of behavior for purchasing, was I in Phoenix? Okay, why in the dickens can't my doctor, my lab, my pharmacy, my hospital have the same information about me electronically? Well, it can. We just haven't done a very good job of demanding it. And now, actually, one of the lesser known features that is very positive about the Affordable Care Act, for all the difficulties it's had in other areas, is some specific money set aside for that to really happen in our communities. In Kentucky, you might not know this, is one of the leading states on actually figuring out how we're going to all follow the same protocols and get that to happen. And we'll probably be ahead of the rest of the nation on making that happen. Well, we're a relatively small state, about 4.5 million people, so it's an interesting lab to make that happen. But it's not far off on the horizon. And of course, all this in an attitude of diminishing resources. How are you going to do more, be creative with less per person to do it? And that's going to be the big challenge. I think we're going to have to probably bring into play two social institutions that have largely had a hall pass for the last 75 years, and that's the family and the church, faith community, because of the rise of government-sponsored programs, all of which have, had a positive impact really on eliminating, for all intents and purposes, poverty among elders and access to health care. But it's not sustainable going forward. And so families that have largely relied on HUD and VA and Medicaid to take care of the old folks, that's not going to be as possible going forward. And don't know what it looks like exactly yet, but I can bet you that there's going to be a bigger role for those two institutions to come back into play. The culture change movement, this is something that's a big buzz term in our space. Been going on for about 8 or 10 years, and it really is about leaving behind the institutional model, that medical care model, with the power differential between healthcare professionals and the healthcare recipient. Where, because I went to school longer than you did, I know more what's better for you, and so just do what I tell you to do and you'll be all right. Ever that happen to you? Well, that's going away because people are getting smarter about what they should expect from their healthcare provider, whether it's for yourself or for your parent. And so with that kind of changing demand in the marketplace, medicine has had to respond. And in long-term care, we're a little ahead of the curve on that, actually. And there's much more interest now in developing your services around a hospitality model with healthcare than a healthcare model. And by the way, if we can make your food taste like anything, we'll try. Here we got the jazz man. I mean, hey, you eat 3 times a day. A big part of your quality of life is going to be that meal, and it's not just about a feeding frenzy, it's about the social aspects of coming together as people in community. And if the food is worth talking about, you're going to stay a little bit longer, and you're going to enjoy your life experience a lot better. And so that's a centerpiece of part of what we're doing as an organization. There's an outfit called the Eden Alternative that Bill Thomas, a physician in Utica, New York, that I think says it as well as anybody has, that the real malady of living in an institutional setting when you're old isn't about your health care. It isn't about your physical being. It's really about these 3 things. It's about helplessness, loneliness, and boredom. And if you can find ways to attack those at their root cause, you've licked 90% of the daily satisfaction in a person's life. Does that make sense? I mean, think about it. And I would add maybe even a 4th, and that is purposefulness. Because one of the things that we do unwittingly in American society, and specifically in long-term care, with the best of intentions, we say, you know what, don't worry about that. Don't worry about the housekeeping, we got that covered. Don't worry about planning the meals, we got that covered too. We're going to cook the meals, we're going to clean, we're going to do your laundry, we'll keep the place clean. You just relax. Okay? Now I want you to think about a guy like this, Mr. Cephalito, who's been a thinking, contributing, active, busy person all of his adult life. How comfortable is it to all of a sudden have the rug pull out from under you and say, you just relax, we've got it covered, and have nothing to substitute for a meaningful, purposeful contribution to others, okay? So a big part of our programming here is not just looking to entertain people. It's looking for ways to keep plugged in with you all. I think it's wonderful that you would turn out the way you have today to be here as their guests. You're not our guests. This is their home. Okay? Well, the way you do that is you have to be purposeful and proactive about involving the community that surrounds you. It's no longer the iceberg philosophy where all the old folks are going to float off into the sunset on an iceberg. It's how can you locate in a place like ours next to Brandon Crossing and be an active, continuing, contributing part of the community as the mentors and wise people who built our town. Does this make sense? I see some of you nodding. In fact, that your head's going back up means you're not just nodding. Appreciate that. So this whole idea of moving away from the medical model and towards something that is kind of used interchangeably as person-centered care. Start with what the person wants, needs, but not with the idea of identifying deficits, identifying remaining strengths, and let's build on those. And then the one we're using more frequently, and so a lot of our not-for-profit sisters and brothers are doing also, is this notion of the importance of relationship, the human network that constitutes community. You won't hear us talk about a facility. We talk about our campuses as communities, because that's what they are. They're a blend of the people that come in. I mean, it's a lovely building, no question about that. We're so proud of the way the architect designed it and the builder built it, but there's a lot of those around that don't have a sense of community inside the roof. And you got to work at that like any relationship. So it's multifaceted. You know, you got staff, you got residents, you got the families of both, you got vendors, visitors, volunteers. All those constitute the community of Bridgepointe at Ashgrove Woods. And then this residential and hospitality emphasis. So you'll see that. I know you probably won't have time today if you're on your lunch hour today and have to split, but I wish you would come back if you're intrigued enough to do so and take a little tour, because what's different as you walk around here has probably three remarkable differences. One is the scale. All of the, go ahead and do the next slide. Oh, this is my shameless plug for Christian Care. And then we've been around 130 years, I already mentioned that. But the next slide means that we've added Nicholasville as our next community. And not too far up the road, we're starting to go vertical with a smaller community in Midway. So we're going to really make a big commitment to Central Kentucky as a big part of our growth in the next couple of years. So Bridgepointe at Ashgrove Woods, keep going. Jamie already gave you the stats, but we have 36 memory care, 36 senior assisted care, which is a little different than assisted living. It's licensed for personal care, which means we can also manage medications. But we've used a kind of a hybrid term with the permission of the Department of Aging and Independent Living as a kind of a test market on, it's like nursing home light, if that makes sense. Okay, so we can do more for people than you can in a typical assisted living, but not quite as much as you would do in a skilled nursing setting. The Best Friends program is a national model that actually started here in Lexington, Kentucky. Virginia Bell, some of you may know Virginia, and her husband Wayne was the president of the Lexington Theological Seminary, created this idea, and it's very simple. It's about recruiting enough volunteers and training them adequately so that a person with dementia who's involved in this day program has a new best friend every day who knows everything about them. And this may sound a little coarse the first time you hear it, but it really doesn't matter because they don't remember who was here with them yesterday. Okay? But if you know everything about them and you know how to carry on the conversation and meet their needs, it can be a changing face every day and be just as effective. So it takes a high level of volunteer recruitment to make a program like that work, as you might imagine, because some people come every third Tuesday, some people come every day. We got a lot of people who are the former spouse or, I should say, the spouse of a former client or adult child or grandchild. Got a lot of UK students out of both the social services and human services field that come and volunteer at this program. And sometimes, just like Clarence in the It's a Wonderful Life, we ring a little bell when we get somebody who thinks they were going to be a pediatrician. Well, I think that geriatric sounds pretty cool. I think that's what I'm going to do. And we ring the bell. Anyway, the Best Friends program is something that we've kind of morphed into our other programming at our residential campuses as well because it works. And there's a newfound interest among the boomers. Now, all I've said so far was disparaging about the boomers, but one of the things about reaching that life stage is your kids are out of the house. Hopefully they're out of the house and not coming back. My strategy for that is we're building a new house with 1 bedroom extra. Any one of them's welcome home at a time, but not all of them at the same time. And volunteerism is kind of coming back on their radar screen. And so we hope to capitalize on that as well here in Jessamine County and Fayette County by having people who maybe their parents aren't here or their grandparents, and they'd like to come over here and help us out with a program like I'm describing. The other unique feature is the actual physical design, and this is borrowed from others who have had great success with this. And if you notice where the 3 stars are, that's out this way. That's our memory care unit, and those are arranged, the apartments are arranged in clusters of 12. That's kind of the sweet spot number, research has shown, for people with dementia and other cognitive impairments on hubbub. That's my high-tech term. The crossfire that someone with mild dementia cannot tolerate and starts to get agitated seems to escalate at about the 10 or 11 people around me level. And so if you can limit their space, their interaction with others to about a dozen, it's almost like the Waltons for geriatrics. They dine together, that's their whole world is right there, but they've got the freedom of movement to wander to the other 2 neighborhoods. And that's how we classify those neighborhoods. So they're themed architecturally with the color and texture and lighting to kind of get an idea of where my home base is. It's another reason that even though we're not-for-profit, and it's a classic tool for not-for-profits to name things for donors, you don't see a lot of plaques around here, even though we've had a lot of help, because you don't want Mrs. Smith going to a room that has Mr. Jones on there because he gave $10,000 to build it, thinking, oh, well, gee, I thought that was my room, but evidently it's Mr. Jones's room. So a lot of little things like that help cue people back to their home space. The other thing you'll notice when you take a tour, the rooms are very small, and that's intentional. That's by purpose. We don't want people living their lives in their bedroom. It's to sleep. And so everybody has their own private bathroom. They don't share a bathroom with anybody else. That's just a dignity issue that we've learned the hard way with the way we've built nursing homes for the last 50 years, not to do it that way. But they've got their home space to retreat to, but where life happens is in the open kind of country kitchen great room in each of those corners, okay, where the stars are. And that's where the activities take place, that's where people interact, that's where meals are served. They're prepared in the kitchen, but they're served out of family style in groups of 12. The other thing that permits us to do is, because we've got some kitchen facilities other than the main commercial kitchen, is that a lot of times Alzheimer's folks get their days and nights mixed up. We call that sundowners syndrome, and it's real. Not everybody, but enough of them is something you have to be mindful of. And you know, if it's 2:30 in the morning and you want a fried egg sandwich and the kitchen's closed, in most places that's just kind of tough. Here's peanut butter and crackers. One of the things we'll be able to do that's a little different is that, well, let's make one. And you know, and sit down and have it, and at any time of day. So again, person-centered, relationship-centered care is kind of a novel theme, but I'll predict that 15 years from now we're going to look back and say, how did we ever not do that? How did we ever not do that? And there's not going to be a good answer, because we should be doing it. And this works better not just for dementia folks, it's practically any health care. And that's why you see a lot of hospitals going with suites of 8, suites of 6. As they renovate their hospital. It's, you know, you look in town here, that's what most of the hospitals are doing with their VIP areas. So we don't have to be a VIP here to make that happen. Then the Best Friends program has its own separate entrance over here. And that's also purposeful, because a lot of folks who would entertain going to the senior center, the adult day program, they don't want to go to the home. Okay, so if you have to come in and out of the main entrance, they think you're up to something. That adult daughter who's bringing her to give it a try thinks, I know what you're up to. You're going to just leave me here one day. And that becomes a barrier that's unnecessary. So we have people sometimes that go on program with the adult day program for years and wind up never needing residential services. And so it's a great patch for families to consider, either as a spouse or even adult children who both work and really can't entertain the notion of having mom move in with me. But if there was something like this, maybe we can give that the old college try, I'll say, and give it a whirl. I want to be mindful of your all's time and allow for some questions and answers. Go through these, you get an idea of the flavor of what I'm talking about. You know, this is going to look a little bit more like a hotel than a nursing home. or a senior residential facility. We had our groundbreaking here, had a big turnout for that, and we're grateful for the community turnout. The jazz man is our secret weapon, as I mentioned earlier, because we already got residents talking to their family members who then talk to everybody at church and at the golf club and everywhere else. You're not going to believe this. Mom loves the food over at the home. And I over-prepared for the time allowed today, and so you'll have to just invite us back sometime to talk about the real trends in aging, because I wanted to mainly make you aware of what's happening here. But we've learned a lot more about the importance of strength and balance, and that's a big part of our programming. Used to be you avoided strength training with old folks because you were afraid of their brittle bones. And as it turns out, that nothing could be further from the truth. And some of that leading work, incidentally, was done here at the University of Kentucky in the physical therapy school, leading to the conclusion that when you have stronger muscles and you've built that up, you also increase bone density. So you reduce your risk of fracture on impact if you should fall. Lifelong learning, we're going to have arrangements with the university. Hopefully we'll be able to work out something with Wilmore and others that are around the area where you don't just come here to be entertained. You come here maybe, and if you're interested, you learn a little something. Maybe not with the idea of developing a career, but maybe about wanting to know more about French literature or something along that line. And then I'm going to wind up with, go ahead, we talked about that. One thing I do want you to know about before you leave here, keep going, is this notion of helping people stay home longer. We've developed a service here in Central Kentucky, and is Tanya still in the room? Okay. It's kind of a lost leader for us right now. It's really not a line of service just yet. But most people, when I get a phone call from somebody I know through scouting or PTA or some other walk of my life, they'll say, hey, I know you're a busy guy, but I know what you do for a living, and it's about my mom. She couldn't get home from Kroger the other day, and I don't know where to start. How do I start? Well, what we've created is a care concierge hotline, essentially, for families who really don't know, what do I do first? What are the resources in my community? Based on what I've told you, what would you recommend I go take a look at first to try to be helpful to my mom? And we're hopeful that, and optimistic that by having that kind of response to the community, that when they do need a service we provide, they're going to want to call us back. And so that's kind of betting on the come a little bit about why that would work as a business model. There is going to be some discussion in this session of the General Assembly about actually funding that service as a wise move for the state of Kentucky. And if that happens, we'll probably go after it. But there's a national association that's developed. Go back a slide. This National Association of Professional Geriatric Care Managers are mostly nurses and social workers that have networked on the internet all around the country, so that not just here in Nicholasville, but let's say you have a relative that's living some distant place. You can plug into this outfit and they'll line you up with somebody who actually becomes the surrogate daughter, and I'll use daughter because that's the vast majority of them. And in our culture, rightly or wrongly, it does fall mostly on women. This is largely a women's issue. They outlive us to begin with, and they're the ones that everybody expects to take charge of it as the adult daughter or daughter-in-law of proximity. But this is going to really grow in popularity because there's a demand for it. So maybe you'll have us back, or maybe we'll have you back. Will y'all entertain that, having everybody back for a lunch sometime? And not too, okay. And we'll talk some more about some of the things I was prepared to talk with you about today, but I didn't allow in my planning for the fact that you would want to dine. And I wanted to show off our dining service, so that was perfect. So I know you have a giveaway. I already suggested that we'd like to give away at a future meeting of yours a Sunday brunch here. Now that you tried it out and know that it's not the school cafeteria, maybe you'll come back. So I'll be happy to stay for any questions you might have. I know a lot of you are on a tight time schedule. Thank you very much.